Every election holds a few surprises, and 2020 was certainly no different. I spoke with University of Minnesota political science professor Dr. Kathryn Pearson about the state's results, and I began by asking her how Minnesota's election system fared during this unique pandemic year.
Our election system is holding up pretty well. Ballots are still being counted as of Thursday morning, pursuant to the laws in each state, and we've seen no systematic, widespread problems that have been reported. There's no evidence of tampering. But it is important, though, that the president has falsely suggested that he has won and accused Democrats of trying to steal the election when there's no evidence of that. So that is causing some voters to be concerned, particularly supporters of the president. And in fact, the U.S. government invited election observers from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe to the United States to observe our election. And in its report, they actually said that the president's attacks on the electoral process had harmed public trust in democratic institutions. And so we do have some concerns about public confidence, and hopefully there will not be violence once we know the results of the election on either side. But I think that, at this time, we need to be cautious about these things, given that there's no widespread problems in this election.
Last time we spoke, you thought there would be very little ticket splitting and more party line voting. That said, Biden won the state, and yet the Senate Republicans in the state maintained control, and the House Republicans picked up some seats. What does this tell you? Do Minnesotans prefer divided government?
That's a great question. And clearly there was some ticket splitting in Minnesota, but it is still the case that the vast majority of voters do vote straight party line. And in fact, at the national level, exit polls suggest that a record number of Democrats voted for Biden and a record number of Republicans voted for Trump. And it is likely that many of those same partisan voters voted straight party lines. However, Minnesota is pretty narrowly divided between the two parties. Democrats have a huge advantage in the metro area, and Republicans are spread sort of more consistently throughout the state and have advantages in greater Minnesota, particularly rural areas. And so in many legislative districts, Republicans are poised to do really quite well. And so, as the Democratic voters are, heavily concentrated into specific districts, and Republican voters are spread out a little bit more evenly throughout the rest of the state, Republicans do quite well at the state legislative level. So do some voters split their tickets? Sure, but the vast majority still vote party line. And I actually think a great example of this dynamic is Minnesota's 7th congressional district, where for years voters were willing to split their tickets. So 4 years ago, this year, Minnesota's 7th congressional district went for President Trump by around 30 points. But up until this year, Democratic congressional incumbent Kathryn Pearson hung on. So clearly a lot of voters in that district, Minnesota 7th, were splitting their ticket. But in this election, that really came to an end. And the 7th district's vote for president and for Michelle Fischbach were pretty consistent, with Republicans having a huge edge in Minnesota's 7th district.
Now, one more just quick follow-up on the Minnesota legislature, because the House did pick up some seats and the Senate remains in Republican control. Is this in any way a referendum on Governor Walz, who was not on the ballot? Is there a frustration factor perhaps going on here?
Well, I think there is a frustration factor going on, particularly among Republicans, that's communicated by Republican leaders and Republican candidates. But the other dynamic going on, as elections get closer to the people, as candidates represent fewer numbers of people, sort of candidate characteristics, those things matter more. Voters are more likely to meet the candidates in person or hear from their campaigns directly in state legislative races. And so I think recruiting and candidate efforts really made a difference for both parties, but gave Republicans an edge in this cycle.
Well, and speaking a little bit more on the Republican edge, because I had a conversation with a lead GOP operative of the Minnesota Senate just this week, and he said this election will show whether door knocking really works. Republicans in Minnesota employed a robust door knocking effort and grassroots outreach. Because of COVID-19, the DFL did less. So did we learn anything about retail politics?
Yeah, and that's I think that's good insight, and it's complicated in a COVID era, right? Safety is obviously a concern, but political science research has long shown that person-to-person contact is more influential than a mailer or a phone call, and I think that the election results for Republicans really show that individual contact, again, where the races were close and with good candidates in swing districts, did have the potential to make a difference.
Now, you mentioned this just a little bit ago, because when you look at maps of election results nationally, but also in Minnesota, there's a clear divide between rural areas, which are generally Republican regions, and urban areas, which, tend to be more Democratic leaning. What do you make of this? Like, why is it such a distinct difference?
Well, this dynamic is not new in 2020. We saw it clearly in 2016, and we saw it in a lot of legislative races leading up to that. And it's also not unique to Minnesota. These dynamics are replicated all over the country. But it is the case that voters in rural America and rural Minnesota feel that Republicans better represent their interests. And in Minnesota specifically, the Democratic Farmer Labor Coalition really has become undone in recent election cycles, both sort of in politics, in the legislature, and in the dynamics in the electorate, where rural voters in general feel that Republicans better meet their interests. But there's also there's sort of the strength of partisan attachment is also changing. Voters are more likely to feel identified with the Republican Party for cultural reasons who don't live in urban areas. And again, to bring back Minnesota's 7th district, congressional district, because it's just so interesting. Certainly it is the case that as the chair of the House Agriculture Committee, Democratic Congressman Kathryn Pearson was very engaged in agricultural issues, sugar beet issues in particular, sort of navigated the Farm Bill for many, many cycles. And yet sort of partisan identity was also a very important factor, and ultimately combined with a strong Republican candidate sort of caused his defeat. And so again, these dynamics are replicated all over the country, where both for sort of social reasons, but economic reasons, and because of partisan attachments, rural voters have really shifted to the Republican Party.
The polling was wrong in 2016, surprising nearly everyone when President Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton. This time, there were predictions of a blue wave, which did not materialize. What's going on?
That is a great question that no doubt pollsters are investigating and will be investigating for quite some time. Clearly, at the beginning of the night, Florida showed us right away that the polling was wrong. And it was particularly wrong in the Miami-Dade area, and it was particularly wrong in sort of accurately representing the preferences of Cuban Americans, Hispanic Americans in Florida. But it's also been sort of systematically wrong, to a lesser extent, but still wrong, across the country in underrepresenting support for President Trump. And that's what happened 4 years ago, and sort of pollsters assured us that they fixed it, that they realized that they didn't have enough whites without college degrees in their samples, and they fixed this to try to make them more representative. But at the end of the day, they weren't fixed. However, I do think once all of the votes are counted, because of the fact that Democrats were more likely to vote absentee and mail in their ballot, and in many states those votes couldn't be processed until election day, I think the polls will be less off than we thought they were, but they were off. And it's a problem that the entire polling industry needs to address.
Now, we've only got just 30 seconds or so left, but the Grassroots Legalized Cannabis Party and the Legal Marijuana Now Party achieved anywhere from 6 to 12% of the vote in this election. With the divided electorate, what is the future role of these third-party candidates?
Well, with a narrowly divided electorate, they definitely have the potential to sort of affect the outcome of races, whether at the congressional level, the state legislative level, or even statewide in a future election. And obviously, they're bringing attention to the issues that they care about on the ballot. And then as we are so polarized between the two parties, they also give independent voters sort of a place to go and express their frustration with the two major parties. In addition, or maybe instead of support for particular issues, legalizing marijuana.
Dr. Kathryn Pearson, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.